Hey everybody, how's it going? We're back on a game here, as you can see that we haven't played in a while on my channel here, unless you're a real OG fan. Shout out all of you guys. It's been a minute since I've come back to World of Warcraft, one of my most beloved franchises of all time here, one of the most legendary gaming franchises of all time here. And we're doing another video essay on World of Warcraft right here. Not another one on World of Warcraft, but in gaming in general here. As you can see from the title and everything, why I think there will never be another game like World of Warcraft. And if you want to get that a little more specific, why there won't be another MMO like World of Warcraft. Because obviously, there's good games before, during, and after World of Warcraft. That's a given. That's a thing that happens. The industry's not going to stop moving with or without World of Warcraft. Obviously, there's a lot of other good games, different games. Even in the MMO genre, you look at before EverQuest was kind of the standard for MMOs before WoW really hit the scene here. Never really got to that like huge popularity and following that World of Warcraft and some others would eventually get to because I don't know, it's just the timing wasn't as good and the game itself honestly was a little more clunkier and hard to get into in general. And even during World of Warcraft's lifespan, you have great MMOs that come out. You have stuff like, I guess Final Fantasy has been a competitor for a bit here, but even before that, RuneScape has been around for a very long time and been competing at that high level. Stuff like, I guess you say Guild Wars, uh, kind of a different market for some MMOs, obviously, but Guild Wars, you've got stuff like Eve. You know, that's a fucking game and a half right there. You can get into a whole video on that, but regardless, you've had that stuff. You've had stuff like New World come out from Amazon and everything. So before, during, and after WoW's kind of launch and peak here, you've had games that are popular, that are good, that are competitive in some sense, at least of the word, with World of Warcraft. And obviously now where it is right now, and I don't think it's at its all-time low or anything right now, but it's been at some dark spots. But it's still, even at those spots, remained kind of the top dog MMO, the keen to usurp, I guess. I was stuttering trying to find an analogy there. But regardless, it still says the same. Why hasn't anything ever really replicated kind of the cultural or social impact and just the impact in general that World of Warcraft has had, not only on the gaming industry but on the world? And like, I guess you could say North America, I guess, because you know how it is with video games. It's mostly a North American and Western European thing, and then it's the Asian markets as well. But you know how it is. Regardless, this the impact that this game has had is profound. Why has never no game ever had the same impact? Why has no game ever really truly dethroned WoW as of yet? Anyways, don't never say never, but as of now, it really hasn't happened. And why is that? What is the secret sauce of WoW? Why has it lasted so long? Why has it not been dethroned? What made it in the first place all the way back in 2004 when it like officially came onto the scene? What made it so special? What made it so impactful? That's kind of what I want to hop into today and kind of analyze that. And it's not a one word answer, one avenue answer here. A lot of things played into World of Warcraft's success all the way back in the day with class or what was just WoW at that time, not even classic vanilla, but what played into it. I think again, like I said, it's a multifaceted answer here. I think just to give a broad overview here, I think the timing was impeccable. I think Blizzard was on a roll and also in a great spot at the time. I think they had an amazing game, lore, gameplay wise, and everything built. The mechanics were all wonderful, especially for the time, obviously. They had all that going for them. There wasn't a ton of competition. It was an easy-ish to access thing. Obviously, this is a game that's only on PC, but especially back in the day, you didn't need a juggernaut of a PC to run this necessarily. It was easy to access. Everyone was kind of playing it. Computers were becoming a lot more normal, especially for gaming purposes and households. So it was like Wi-Fi and internet and everything, and getting connections to people, through virtual worlds and multiplayer senses like that. And I mean, it didn't really get a lot of really serious competitors until somewhat recently, actually. So I think all of those, we'll explore each of those more deeply, obviously, here in a minute. But I think that's a broad overview of kind of, in a nutshell, what made WoW so popular and successful back then, and why it got to the point, at its peak where it did, when it did, I guess you could say. I think when is an important part of it because, as we all know, World of Warcraft and like, I guess Shadowlands, I think is its rock bottom as far as like, since I guess it's launched and built up a player base, I guess, for like players and how popular it was. But people don't realize, even back in classic like vanilla or WoW, or in Wrath of the Lich King was its peak, and then Burning Crusade was obviously massive as well. By the time it had gotten to the peak of Wrath of the Lich King, I can't remember the exact number of like monthly active users, but it was the peak of WoW. I want to say it was like somewhere in the ballpark of like 16 million. Don't hold me to that, but somewhere around that. That sounds kind of low, honestly, though. I don't know. But it was absurd. It was the most popular game in the world for a long time, World of Warcraft. It was a cultural phenomenon, similar to the ways that like Minecraft, that like Fortnite, and even going outside of the video game industry, like Game of Thrones, for example, was. Everybody knew about it. Everybody was playing it. If you played video games in general, I guess. And if you weren't, you were the odd one out. They got a fucking South Park episode that's widely regarded as the best episode South Park has ever done, and that's not just because of the hype around it. It's because of the cultural impact and obviously the episode's great in general, but it's because of the cultural impact it had as well. It was massive. People don't understand how massive World of Warcraft was, and on top of that, this was just a PC game. It's not available on your phone. It's not like Tetris where it's gotten the most downloads or whatever the fuck. Technically it's the most popular game ever, but we all know in reality that's kind of a little skewed. But World of Warcraft, not on your phone, not on your PlayStation, not on your Nintendo, not on your Xbox even. It's just PC. Just PC, and it's a subscription-based service. Yes, you can download the game for free, but if you want to play it past level 20, and that wasn't always a thing, even that, you're paying $15 a month, or a little less, I guess, if you have the bundles like the 3 and the 6 and 12. But regardless, $15 a month plus expansions. You're paying like I don't know if it's changed throughout. I can't remember, but you're paying full price game for an expansion on top of a $15 a month subscription, and it's only on PC. And it reached a level almost unfathomable in gaming and kind of in cultural impact levels that we've seen really ever. And let's just get into why I think this happened and why I don't think it'll ever happen again. First off, the first thing I kind of mentioned there in the kind of nutshell overview for people who aren't going to stay around for the whole video, which I completely understand, timing and the culture that was present at the moment, especially in the video game industry. Timing was impeccable for a few reasons that I kind of looped in as well. There wasn't a bunch of competitors. Timing was perfect because, as I've mentioned, PC gaming and PCs were getting into homes more. Internet and good solid internet and Wi-Fi were really picking up. People were gaming on their PCs more. It was becoming a lot more commonplace in the early 2000s there. It wasn't just single player games either. It was opening up the multiplayer possibilities. A lot of open world stuff like this, a lot of collaborative stuff like World of Warcraft is. Obviously, it's a massively multiplayer. Honestly, what does MMO stand? I'm gonna sound like a fucking idiot right now, but MMO, massively multiplayer online game or whatever. Hopefully, but it's an RPG that was opening up. I think they capitalized at the right time when that had not begun to emerge, but had really fully emerged by the time late in 2004, and had become a staple of the industry at that point. And there wasn't a bunch of competitors. As I mentioned, EverQuest was kind of there, but EverQuest wasn't like anywhere near what WoW would become. It was popular. It was kind of the status quo of the MMO genre, such as it was, I guess, back then when EverQuest was king. It was kind of a low bar to beat, I guess you could say. MMOs weren't really around outside of EverQuest. Well, they were, but it was really just EverQuest. EverQuest wasn't as easy to get into. Wasn't as, I guess you could say, user friendly, for lack of a better term, as like how open and easy to get into it was. And again, that's subjective and that changes with time, but still the point stands. EverQuest is a bit more difficult. It was a bit more confusing and hardcore, and it had kind of this cult following community. It just never was going to get to that point. It's a legendary game in its own right for what it did, but it was never going to get to that point. WoW kind of springboarded off of that and made an amazing success story. And another reason why is because, first of all, the game itself is just amazing. That's the thing that timing has no impact on, and I think WoW would still be a pretty popular game if it released 10 years later. It's an amazing game. The Warcraft like IP and world and the lore and everything built into it is absolutely fantastic. It's an amazing world, amazing lore, amazing gameplay mechanics, and it's incredibly popular and cool, and people love it for a reason. It's fantastic. And on top of that, getting into Blizzard a little bit, obviously the company behind World of Warcraft here, Activision Blizzard as it is now, and I guess Microsoft as it is now, since they've been bought, of course. But regardless, Blizzard wasn't new to the gaming industry. It wasn't new to World of Warcraft, or it was to the World of Warcraft, but not Warcraft. Blizzard had already, at this point, built up quite the reputation in the gaming industry. It had StarCraft, obviously, as a big thing, Diablo. It had, Warcraft, the RTS game, obviously. That was a huge thing. Warcraft wasn't new to people. Blizzard wasn't new to people. Both the franchise, like, intellectual property and the world itself, not new to the scene. The company wasn't new to the scene. Both had very high interest and were very highly regarded in the gaming industry. I think that on top of the timing and the springboard off of EverQuest and having lack of competition really until later into its lifespan made WoW something that had yet to be seen to that point and that everybody wanted a piece of, regardless of whether it was a $15 a month subscription or eventually you'd have to pay for expansions like Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King, of course. That's why I think it made it such a, I guess, perfect storm for it to succeed the way it did. Not just succeed, but succeed into the level that made it the most popular game in the world for a substantial period of time there. On top of that, I think just the gaming industry back then was different. This kind of goes into the timing aspect as is all of this in somewhat, but the gaming industry was different back then, and the way people interacted with games was different. Classic, actual vanilla WoW, and then Burning Crusade and stuff. It was pure gaming. There wasn't this kind of soulless appeal that you see in a lot of modern games, where everything is microtransactions, whether it's pay to win or not, or just cosmetics. There wasn't any of that really around. It wasn't pushing you towards that a bunch. It wasn't, it didn't feel like really incredibly like I don't know. It didn't feel kind of corporatey. It didn't feel anything. It felt like grassroots, I guess, for lack of a better term, gaming. It was just simple fun and an amazingly, developed world and a live world that people could interact with their friends on. It was the first time a lot of people were experiencing a game like this. I think also people were just back then a lot more apt to actually play into a game like this. And what I mean by that particularly is people interacted and talked and grouped up and got with other people and were more open to talking and doing stuff with other people back in the day than they are now. I don't think it's any secret. Look at Call of Duty and stuff. How many people actually talk in game chat every single game? You have one or two odd people out that aren't in a party chats or in Discord or something. But people weren't in party chats or in Discord or even in Skype back then. You know, they were talking in the game chat. They were, if they really wanted something, they could get a call going, of course, for like a raid or something, or a dungeon even. But a lot of times you were just talking in game chat, coordinating groups, inviting people to your group, talking in your group chat. You didn't go on Discord every time you had a dungeon or a raid to find people in like 10 seconds and then leave and never talk to them after that. It was just whoever was in the region, whoever was in the city you were in and trying to group up with and responded to your game chat. People were just a lot different, and the gaming industry as a whole was a lot different. People interacted with it differently in the ways I mentioned, as well as people as well as corporations that make video games made them in a much different way, where it wasn't this kind of cash grab. It wasn't, anything bad or, that kind of tainted the entire essence of it. It's kind of like why games like Schedule One, succeed today. It's because it's just pure gaming. It's a simple game. There's no microtransactions he's pushing you towards. He just puts out a cool product and a good world and a good game, and it's a lot of fun, and people just enjoy it. I also think kind of the way people interact with games. I think with the internet, it's become a lot less necessary to necessarily group up or like talk to people to figure out how do you do this? What did you do? Like how do you do that? Or hey man, I need the help on this quest at this dungeon run. Can you help me? Or how'd you do it and everything? And you can just Google it or like, oh okay, I need a few people. Hop in a Discord call. Never talk to these fucking people ever again after this dungeon gets through and I get whatever I need. So I think the entire attitude of the industry was different. I think lastly why it's never been dethroned permanently anyways or for any substantial period of time. It's just the competition is hard. First of all, I don't think there's quite the demand for MMOs anymore that there was back then. I think it was again going back in the timing, it was a great timing for MMOs. It was new. People wanted to interact like this over the internet, something that hasn't really been done to this extent ever before. People wanted that. I think that's faded over time. MMOs not the most popular genre, not the most in demand genre anymore. Not to say that it's not somewhat popular, but it's just not what it used to be. And it's hard to compete. It's not something that is a cheap progression. MMOs take a lot of money and everything and backing to really succeed and put up for long periods of time. It's only something big companies have really gotten into recently. Like Amazon is a perfect example of New World. It's not a cheap endeavor. It's not an easy endeavor by any means. And when it is, it's more often than not a very poor quality because of the lack of backing and money. So it's not an easy industry to get into, and it's not a very in-demand industry to get into. But yeah, so that's kind of my analysis and video essay on why WoW succeeded so much and why I don't think there'll ever be a game like it again. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought of the video and what you think of my, I guess, video essay and your thoughts on it. If you enjoyed, I encourage you to like and subscribe. Always helps out the channel. I appreciate everything you all have been doing since I've been back here. And yeah, I'll see you all later.